The research station's motion sensors screamed warnings across every screen in the medical bay. Dr. Anna Reed looked up from her microscope, where she had been studying tissue samples from the local plant life. The alarms meant only one thing on this frontier world. The hunters were coming. Through the reinforced windows, she could see them emerging from the purple forest that surrounded the human settlement. These creatures stood nearly 3 meters tall, their bodies covered in thick, dark fur that gleamed like metal in the alien sun. Their faces were wolf-like but broader, with intelligence burning in their yellow eyes. Massive claws scraped against the ground as they moved with deadly grace. The lead hunter was enormous even by their standards. His fur bore the ritual scars that marked him as Bladespeaker Crone, the pack leader who controlled this territory. The humans had maintained an uneasy peace with his kind for 3 years, but the aliens had never approached the settlement directly before. Anna pressed her face against the window. Something was wrong. Crone moved differently today, not with his usual predatory confidence, but with something that looked almost like desperation. Behind him, other hunters carried a smaller form between them. Captain Roy Davis burst into the medical bay, his face pale with worry. "Anna, get away from the window. We don't know what they want, but they're armed and agitated." "Look at what they're carrying," Anna said, pointing toward the group. The smaller figure was clearly one of their young, barely the size of a human adult, but unmistakably a hunter cub. Its fur was matted with something dark, and it hung limp between the carriers. The settlement's communication system crackled to life. The hunters had learned basic human speech over the years, though they rarely used it. Crone's deep voice filled the air, each word carefully pronounced despite his alien throat structure. "Softskins who live in metal caves." Crone's voice rumbled through the speakers. "Bladespeaker Crone seeks the healing makers. Smallclaw is dying. Pack medicine cannot save offspring." Captain Davis grabbed Anna's arm. "You're not seriously thinking about going out there. They could tear us apart in seconds." Anna pulled free and moved toward the medical supply lockers. Her hands shook as she began gathering basic diagnostic equipment. "Roy, that's a child out there. A dying child. Their leader just swallowed his pride and asked us for help. We don't know their anatomy well enough to help. You could make things worse. I've been studying their biology for 3 years. I know more about hunter physiology than anyone else on this planet." Anna stuffed medical scanners into a portable kit. "Besides, what choice do we have? If that cub dies and we refuse to help, what do you think happens to our peace treaty?" Through the window, they could see more hunters emerging from the forest. Dozens of them now surrounded the settlement, all watching their leader with the same desperate intensity. The cub in their arms had stopped moving entirely. Dr. Ben Torres, the station's medic, entered the bay carrying additional supplies. His usually cheerful face was grim. "I heard the communication. Anna, even if we could help, we don't have the right equipment for surgery on something that size. Then we improvise." Anna sealed her medical kit and headed toward the airlock. "Ben, prep the surgical bay for emergency procedures. Roy, clear everyone else from the medical wing." Captain Davis blocked her path. "I cannot authorize this. If something goes wrong, if that thing dies on our table, those creatures will blame us. This settlement has 200 people, Anna. I won't risk their lives for one alien." Anna stared at him for a long moment. Outside, Crone's voice came through the speakers again, this time with a note of pleading that chilled her blood. The proud hunter leader was begging. "Roy, look at them. Really look." Anna gestured toward the window. "Those aren't monsters out there. They're a family watching their child die. If we don't try to help, we're no better than animals ourselves." She pushed past him toward the airlock controls. "And if you want to think strategically, consider this. What happens to human-hunter relations if we save their leader's child? What doors might that open?" Captain Davis caught her arm again, but more gently this time. "Anna, their blood is acidic. Their bone structure is crystalline. One mistake and you could be killed just from contact. I know the risks." Anna pulled on protective gloves and sealed her medical kit. "But I also know that child doesn't have much time left. Every minute we spend arguing is a minute closer to losing our chance." Through the communication system, Crone spoke again. This time his words came out broken, desperate. "Healing makers, Smallclaw breathes no more. Pack begs Softskins. We'll trade territory. We'll share hunting grounds. Please save offspring of Bladespeaker." The settlement fell silent except for the hum of machinery. Even through the alien speech patterns, the raw emotion in Krone's voice was unmistakable. Anna had studied the hunters long enough to know that their society valued strength above all else. For Krone to beg, to offer territorial concessions, meant that saving this cub was worth more to him than his own pride or power. Anna activated the airlock and stepped inside. Through the reinforced glass, she could see Captain Davis arguing with Dr. Torres, but she couldn't hear their words over the cycling air systems. She didn't need to. She knew they would help her once she started. That was the kind of people they were. The outer door opened and Anna stepped onto the planet's surface for the first time in months. The air smelled different here, heavy with the scent of the purple forest and something else, the musk of frightened, desperate creatures. Krone approached slowly, his massive form towering over her. Up close she could see the intelligence in his alien eyes, along with something she had never seen in a hunter before. Hope. "You will try to save Small Claw?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Anna looked at the small form lying motionless in the arms of the other hunters. The cub's breathing was so shallow it was barely visible. She had no idea if she could save this alien child, but she knew she had to try. "Bring your offspring to our healing place," she said, using the simple speech patterns the hunters preferred. "We will do everything we can." The medical bay had never been designed for patients this large. Small Claw, despite being young, still measured nearly 2 meters in length and weighed over 100 kilograms. Dr. Anna, Reed watched as 4 hunters carefully placed the unconscious cub on the reinforced examination table that Dr. Ben Torres had hastily modified with extra supports. Though, cub's breathing was so shallow that Anna had to place her hand directly on its chest to feel the rise and fall. Through the protective material of her gloves, she could sense the alien's body temperature, much higher than human normal, but probably low for a hunter. The dark patches in its fur that she had seen from the window were definitely blood, now dried and crusted. Captain Roy Davis stood in the doorway, his face pale as he watched the massive aliens fill the medical bay. Krone remained close to his offspring, his yellow eyes tracking every movement Anna made. The other hunters positioned themselves around the room like guards, their claws clicking nervously against the metal floor. "Anna, this is madness," Roy whispered, pulling her aside. "Look at the size of those claws. One swipe and they could cut you in half. If something goes wrong during the surgery, then we make sure nothing goes wrong." Anna activated the medical scanner and began running it over Small Claw's body. The readings that appeared on her screen made her stomach clench. Multiple internal injuries, severe blood loss, and what looked like damage to several major organs. Dr. Torres approached with a portable IV unit, modified with longer tubes and larger needles. "I've prepared everything I could think of, but Anna, we don't know how their circulatory system works. We don't even know their blood type compatibility." Anna studied the scanner readings more carefully. The hunter physiology was similar enough to large Earth mammals that she could identify most of the major organs, but there were crucial differences. Where humans had one heart, the hunters had 3 smaller ones arranged in a triangular pattern. Their bones showed up on the scanner as dense crystalline structures that would be nearly impossible to break, but might shatter catastrophically if damaged. "Look at this." Anna pointed to a dark area on the scan. "Massive internal bleeding here and here. Something punctured right through the chest cavity. Ben, we need to get IV access established immediately." Krone moved closer to the table, his massive form casting a shadow over his offspring. "Rival pack attacked at dawn. Small Claw defended territory alone, too proud to call for help. Tusked beast charged, horns pierced deep." Anna nodded grimly. A territorial dispute, just as she had suspected. The hunter's warrior culture meant even their young were expected to fight when necessary. Small Claw had paid the price for that courage. Captain Davis grabbed Anna's arm. "Doctor, I need to speak with you privately. Now." They stepped into the adjacent supply room where Roy's anxiety boiled over. "Anna, I've been in contact with Colonial Command. They're furious that we've allowed armed aliens into the settlement. If this goes badly, if that creature dies, Command will hold me responsible for whatever happens next. And if we refuse to help and it dies anyway?" Anna challenged. "Roy, there are 40 hunters outside our walls right now, with more arriving every hour. If Small Claw dies and we did nothing, how do you think they'll react?" Through the doorway, They could see Dr. Torres attempting to establish IV access on the cub. The hunter's acidic blood was already corroding the standard tubing, forcing him to constantly replace the lines with acid-resistant alternatives from their hazmat supplies. The equipment isn't designed for this, Roy continued. Our surgical tools will dissolve in their blood. Our medications could poison them. And even if by some miracle you save that thing, what then? Do we become the aliens' personal medical service? Do they start bringing us every injured hunter in the territory? Anna watched as Crone gently touched his offspring's face with one massive claw, the gesture startlingly tender despite his fearsome appearance. Roy, that's not that thing on our table. That's someone's child. If it were a human child in there, would you even hesitate? This isn't a human child. This is an alien predator that will grow up to be 3 meters of muscle, claws, and fangs. An alien predator whose father is currently trusting us with its life. Anna pulled on a fresh pair of acid-resistant gloves. Roy, this isn't just about medicine. This is about what kind of species we want to be. Do we help only our own, or do we help any child that's dying? Before Captain Davis could respond, Dr. Torres called out urgently, Anna, you need to see this. The blood chemistry is completely wrong. The oxygen carrying capacity is dropping rapidly. Anna hurried back to the examination table. The scanner showed Small Claw's vital signs deteriorating steadily. Whatever internal injuries the cub had sustained were getting worse, not better. They were running out of time. Ben prepped the surgical bay. Full sterile setup, but with the acid-resistant equipment. Anna looked up at Crone. Blade speaker, we must cut open Small Claw to fix inside injuries. This is very dangerous. Small Claw might die. Crone's eyes met hers, and she saw a father's desperation there. Small Claw dies now without Healing Maker's help. Pack leader gives permission. Try to save offspring. Captain Davis stepped forward, his voice tight with tension. Dr. Reed, I cannot officially authorize this procedure. If you proceed, you do so against my direct orders and against colonial protocols. Anna looked at him steadily. Then I proceed against orders, Roy. Some things are more important than protocols. She turned to Dr. Torres. Ben, I need you to monitor vital signs and assist with the surgery. This is going to be unlike anything we've ever attempted. Dr. Torres nodded grimly. The surgical bay is ready. I've set up every piece of acid-resistant equipment we have, but Anna, once we start, we're in completely uncharted territory. As they prepared to move Small Claw to the surgical bay, more alarms began sounding throughout the settlement. Through the windows, Anna could see additional hunters emerging from the forest. The crowd outside had grown to nearly 100 individuals, all waiting to learn the fate of their leader's offspring. Crone noticed her looking and spoke quietly. Other pack leaders arrive. If Small Claw lives, hunters remember Softskins as friends. If Small Claw dies... He didn't finish the sentence, but the implication was clear. Anna took a deep breath and began pushing the medical table toward the surgical bay. Behind her, she could hear Captain Davis on the communication system, trying to explain the situation to Colonial Command. Dr. Torres gathered the last of their improvised equipment. As they entered the surgical bay, Anna realized she was about to attempt something that had never been done before. Major surgery on an alien species with equipment designed for humans, using techniques based on partial knowledge of hunter biology. The odds of success were minimal at best, but looking at Small Claw's still form on the table and remembering the desperate hope in Crone's eyes, Anna knew she had to try. Some risks were worth taking, especially when a child's life hung in the balance. The surgical bay hummed with tension as Dr. Anna Reed made her first incision. The acid-resistant scalpel cut through Small Claw's thick hide more easily than she had expected, but immediately the real challenges began. The hunter's blood was not just acidic, it was actively corrosive, eating through the surgical instruments within minutes of contact. Ben, hand me another scalpel. This one's already pitted. Anna's voice remained steady despite the sweat beading on her forehead. Through the surgical bay's reinforced window, she could see Crone's massive silhouette pressed against the glass, watching every movement. Dr. Ben Torres quickly swapped the damaged instrument for a fresh one from their dwindling supply of acid-resistant tools. Anna, we've got maybe 24 of these left. At this rate, we'll run out before we're halfway done. The internal damage was worse than the external scans had revealed. Small Claw's chest cavity showed the brutal reality of the territorial fight. A massive puncture wound had torn through muscle, pierced one of the 3 hearts and damaged what appeared to be the alien equivalent of a liver. Dark blood pooled in the body cavity, slowly eating away at surrounding tissue. "Look at this," Anna murmured, using a specially coated probe to examine the damaged heart. Unlike human cardiac muscle, the hunter's heart tissue had a fibrous, almost crystalline structure. It's like their hearts are partially mineralized. "Ben, are you getting this on the scanner?" "Recording everything." "Anna, the blood pressure readings are dropping fast. Whatever we're going to do, we need to do it now." Anna began the delicate process of repairing the punctured heart. The crystalline muscle tissue responded differently to surgical techniques than anything she had worked with before. Traditional sutures simply dissolved in the acidic blood, forcing her to experiment with specialized medical adhesives designed for extreme chemical environments. Outside the settlement, the crowd of hunters had grown restless. Through the building's security monitors, Captain Roy Davis watched more packs arriving from across the territory. The aliens moved in tight formations, their body language radiating barely controlled aggression. Several disputes had already broken out between rival groups, only Krone's authority keeping them from full violence. "Anna," Roy's voice came through the surgical bay's communication system. "We've got nearly 200 hunters outside now. Some of the pack leaders are demanding updates on the surgery." "Tell them we're working," Anna replied without looking up from her patient. She was carefully cleaning corrosive blood from around the damaged organs, using specialized suction equipment that had to be constantly replaced as the acidic fluid ate through the tubing. The hunter's anatomy continued to surprise her. Where she expected to find familiar organ arrangements, she discovered new structures whose purposes she could only guess at. A secondary lung system seemed designed for processing the planet's unusual atmospheric mix. A complex network of crystalline nodes throughout the body probably regulated their enhanced strength and speed. "Anna, look at this reading." Dr. Torres pointed to one of the monitors. "Brain activity is spiking. I think Small Claw is starting to wake up." This was exactly what Anna had feared. The alien physiology was fighting off the sedatives faster than anticipated. She could see Small Claw's massive chest beginning to rise and fall more rapidly, and the cub's claws twitched involuntarily. "Increase the sedative drip. We can't have this patient waking up in the middle of surgery." Anna continued working, using microsurgical techniques to repair torn blood vessels. The hunter's circulatory system was incredibly complex, with multiple parallel pathways that could apparently reroute blood around damaged areas. As she worked deeper into the chest cavity, Anna discovered the most serious injury yet. The puncture wound had damaged something that looked like a major nerve cluster, possibly the alien equivalent of a spinal cord. Dark fluid leaked from the damaged neural tissue, and the scanner showed minimal electrical activity in the area. "Ben, I need the neurostimulator. If this nerve cluster is what I think it is, Small Claw could be paralyzed for life." Anna's hands moved with practiced precision despite the mounting pressure. Every few minutes she had to pause to replace corroded instruments or clear acidic buildup from the surgical field. Dr. Torres handed her the neurostimulator, a device designed for treating human spinal injuries. "Anna, we don't know how their nervous system responds to electrical stimulation. This could cause permanent damage, or it could save the patient's ability to walk." Anna carefully positioned the device near the damaged neural cluster. Sometimes you have to take calculated risks. The first gentle pulse of electricity caused Small Claw's entire body to convulse. The massive form thrashed against the surgical restraints, nearly throwing Anna across the room. Alarm screamed as vital signs spiked dangerously high. Through the window, Krone roared in alarm at seeing his offspring's violent reaction. The sound echoed through the settlement, answered by hundreds of other hunter voices from outside. The crowd pressed closer to the building, their agitation reaching dangerous levels. "Anna, whatever you did, it's working," Dr. Torres called out excitedly. "Look at the neural activity readings. The damaged area is showing increased electrical patterns." Anna quickly applied medical sealant to the nerve cluster, hoping to prevent further damage while allowing the stimulated tissue to begin healing. The hunter's biology was proving remarkably resilient, much more so than human physiology would be under similar circumstances. 4 hours into the surgery, Anna encountered her next major challenge. Small Claw's unique blood chemistry was creating toxic buildup in the kidneys and liver. The organs that should have been filtering waste products were instead being slowly poisoned by the very blood they were trying to clean. "We need to flush the system completely," Anna realized. "Ben, prep the dialysis unit. We're going to have to artificially filter this patient's blood while the organs recover. Anna, the dialysis machine wasn't designed for this blood chemistry. We don't even know what normal blood values should be for this species. Then we guess. We observe. We adapt. We keep trying. Anna continued working, her movements becoming more confident as she began to understand the alien physiology. Despite the massive differences from human anatomy, there were underlying principles that remained consistent. Damaged tissue needed repair, severed vessels needed reconnection, and infected areas needed cleaning. The crowd outside had grown quiet, but not in a reassuring way. Through the security monitors, Captain Davis could see the hunters arranged in formation around the settlement. They were no longer randomly gathered. They were organized, ready for action. Whatever happened in the next few hours would determine whether the humans faced grateful allies or vengeful enemies. Inside the surgical bay, Anna worked on. 5 hours had passed, then 6. Her hands ached from the constant, precise movements, and her back protested from leaning over the surgical table. But Smallclaw's vital signs were slowly stabilizing, and the worst of the internal damage had been repaired. "Anna, you should see this," Dr. Torres said, pointing to the latest scanner results. "The neural stimulation worked better than we hoped. Look at the nerve regeneration patterns." Anna paused in her work to examine the readings. The damaged neural cluster was actually rebuilding itself, growing new connections at a rate that would be impossible in human patients. The hunter's healing abilities were extraordinary. "Maybe they're tougher than we thought," she murmured, returning to the delicate work of repairing the last damaged organs. Outside, dawn was beginning to break over the alien landscape, but Anna barely noticed. She had work to finish. 8 hours into the surgery, Dr. Anna Reed discovered the injury that might kill Smallclaw despite all her efforts. Hidden beneath layers of muscle and crystalline bone, the puncture wound had severed connections to what appeared to be the hunter's primary neural control center. The damage was microscopic but catastrophic, like trying to repair individual wires in a computer chip with tools designed for construction work. "Ben, I need the microsurgical array. The finest instruments we have." Anna's voice carried a new tension as she studied the scanner readings. The neural cluster controlled everything from breathing to heartbeat to basic motor functions. Without it working properly, Smallclaw might survive the surgery only to die from system failures. Dr. Ben Torres wheeled over the microsurgical unit, designed for the most delicate human operations. "Anna, these instruments are calibrated for human neural tissue. We're talking about connections smaller than a human hair, in an alien nervous system we barely understand." Through the surgical bay window, Crone pressed closer to the glass. Even through his alien features, Anna could see the growing desperation. The hunter leader had been watching for 8 hours straight, never moving from his position, never eating or drinking. His yellow eyes tracked every instrument, every movement, as if he could will his offspring back to health through pure determination. Anna began the painstaking process of neural repair. Using instruments designed for human brain surgery, she attempted to reconnect severed pathways in an alien mind. The work required absolute precision. One mistake could cause permanent brain damage or immediate death. "Power fluctuation in Sector 7, Captain Roy Davis announced over the communication system. "Anna, we're pushing our electrical systems beyond their limits. The microsurgical equipment is drawing massive amounts of power. The settlement's power grid had never been designed to support extended surgical procedures of this complexity. The combination of life support systems, surgical equipment, and defensive barriers around the settlement was straining their fusion reactor to its maximum output. How long can we maintain this power level?" Anna asked without taking her eyes off the neural tissue she was repairing. "Maybe 2 more hours before we start having brownouts. After that, we'll have to choose between life support for the settlement and power for your surgical equipment." Anna's hands never stopped moving as she processed this information. 2 hours to complete microsurgery that would normally take 6 hours under ideal conditions. Using equipment designed for a completely different species, the odds were becoming impossible. Outside the settlement, the situation was deteriorating rapidly. Nearly 300 hunters now surrounded the human buildings, and territorial disputes between different packs were escalating into open fights. The aliens' natural aggression was being held in check only by their shared concern for Smallclaw's fate. Through the security monitors, Captain Davis watched a particularly violent confrontation between 2 pack leaders. Only Crone's lieutenant, a scarred female named Swiftstrike, managed to separate the combatants before blood was spilled. But her authority was limited, and more disputes were breaking out across the gathered crowd. "Anna, the situation outside is getting critical," Roy's voice carried over the intercom. "Some of the pack leaders are demanding to know why the surgery is taking so long. Swiftstrike is trying to maintain order, but if this goes on much longer, then we make sure it doesn't go on much longer." Anna adjusted the microsurgical laser to its finest setting. The neural pathways she was trying to repair were so small that she was working almost entirely by scanner feedback, trusting instruments to show her damage invisible to the naked eye. Dr. Torres monitored the patient's vital signs, watching for any indication that the neural repairs were working. Smallclaw's breathing had become irregular, and the 3 hearts were beating in an uncoordinated pattern that suggested the control systems were failing. "Anna, brain activity is dropping. Whatever controls basic autonomic functions in their species, I think we're losing it." Anna increased her pace, working with desperate precision to reconnect the severed neural pathways. The hunter's nervous system was incredibly complex, with backup systems and redundancies that human biology lacked, but those same systems made it nearly impossible to determine which connections were critical. Suddenly, the lights flickered throughout the surgical bay. The power grid was beginning to fail under the sustained load. Emergency lighting activated, casting harsh shadows across the operating table. "We're entering brownout conditions," Captain Davis announced. "Anna, I have to reduce power to non-essential systems." "The surgical equipment is essential," Anna replied firmly, continuing her microscopic work even as the lights dimmed further. "So is life support for 200 colonists. I'm sorry, Anna, but I have to prioritize the settlement." The microsurgical array powered down with a soft whine, leaving Anna with only basic surgical tools. The delicate neural work would have to continue using techniques designed for much larger structures. It was like trying to repair a watch with a hammer. "Ben, hand me the standard neural probe. If I can't work with precision, I'll have to work with instinct." Dr. Torres passed her the instrument, his face grim. They both knew that attempting neural surgery without the proper equipment was essentially guesswork. One wrong move could destroy Smallclaw's mind completely. Anna took a deep breath and began working by feel, using her knowledge of hunter physiology and years of surgical experience to guide her movements. The neural tissue felt different under her probes, more resilient than human nerve fibers but also more complex in its interconnections. Outside, the power reduction had not gone unnoticed. The defensive barriers around the settlement flickered and failed, leaving only the physical walls between the humans and hundreds of increasingly agitated hunters. Swiftstrike moved through the crowd trying to explain the situation, but her explanations were met with growing hostility. Several younger hunters began approaching the settlement walls, their claws extended and their body language threatening. The older pack leaders called them back, but the discipline was breaking down. Fear and frustration were overwhelming the aliens' respect for Crone's authority. "Anna, we've got hunters at the perimeter fence," Captain Davis reported. "They're not attacking yet, but they're testing our defenses. If Smallclaw dies now..." "Smallclaw is not going to die," Anna stated with absolute conviction even as she struggled to reconnect neural pathways using inadequate tools. "Ben, increase the stimulation to the primary heart. If I can get the autonomic systems working again, the rest might follow." Dr. Torres adjusted the settings on the heart monitor, sending stronger electrical pulses to Smallclaw's damaged cardiac control center. For a moment, nothing happened. Then suddenly, all 3 hearts began beating in synchronization for the first time since the surgery began. "That's it," Anna breathed. "The neural connections are responding. Keep those settings exactly where they are." Working by touch and instinct, Anna continued the delicate process of neural repair. Each connection she restored brought Smallclaw's vital signs closer to normal. The cub's breathing became more regular, and brain activity patterns began showing the complex rhythms associated with consciousness. But the power situation continued to deteriorate. The settlement's fusion reactor was running at dangerous levels, and Captain Davis faced an impossible choice: maintain power for the surgery and risk a reactor failure that could kill everyone, or shut down the surgical equipment and almost certainly doom Smallclaw. Through the surgical bay window, Crone watched his offspring's vital signs slowly improve. The massive hunter leader had not moved from his position in over 10 hours. his vigil becoming a testament to parental love that transcended species boundaries. Anna worked on through the long night, her hands steady despite exhaustion that threatened to overwhelm her. 12 hours into the surgery, she was operating on pure determination and professional instinct. The neural repairs were nearly complete, but the most dangerous part of the procedure still lay ahead. Ben prepped the revival protocol. We need to bring Small Claw back to consciousness gradually and see if the neural repairs are holding. Dr. Torres began reducing the sedation levels, monitoring brain activity for signs that the young hunter was ready to wake up. Outside, dawn was still hours away, but Anna could see the first signs that her patient might survive the night. 12 hours after beginning the surgery, Dr. Anna Reed faced the decision that would determine Small Claw's fate. The hunter cub's neural pathways were partially restored, but critical connections in the motor control center remained severed. Anna could continue with conservative treatment, slowly rebuilding each connection over many more hours, or attempt a revolutionary procedure that had never been tested on any living creature. Ben, look at these readings, Anna said, pointing to the neural activity monitor. The sensory pathways are responding, but motor function is still completely dead. Small Claw might survive but never walk again. Dr. Ben Torres studied the scanner displays, his face drawn with exhaustion. He had been assisting for 12 straight hours, constantly replacing corroded instruments and monitoring vital signs that fluctuated wildly as Anna worked. Anna, what are you thinking? Bioelectric stimulation therapy. We use controlled electrical pulses to force new neural pathways to grow, essentially rewiring the damaged sections. Anna's voice carried both excitement and fear. I've read about experimental procedures on Earth, but they've never been successful on this scale. Anna, that's not experimental. That's theoretical. The neural damage here is massive compared to anything attempted in those studies. You could kill Small Claw instantly. Through the surgical bay window, Crone continued his vigil. The massive hunter leader showed signs of exhaustion for the first time, his shoulders sagging slightly as he watched his offspring's motionless form. Behind him, Anna could see other hunters pressing against the windows, their yellow eyes reflecting the surgical bay's harsh lighting. The settlement's power grid groaned under the continued strain. Captain Roy Davis had been forced to shut down non-essential systems throughout the colony, reducing life support to minimum levels and leaving entire sections in darkness. The fusion reactor's cooling systems were approaching critical temperatures. Anna, Roy's voice crackled through the intercom, distorted by power fluctuations. I need to know how much longer this is going to take. We're pushing our reactor beyond safe parameters. If it fails, we lose everything. Anna looked at Small Claw's still form on the surgical table. The cub's breathing was stable, and the internal injuries were healing. But the neural damage meant the young hunter would never walk or run or fight like others of its kind. For a species that valued physical prowess above all else, that might be worse than death. Roy, I need 6 more hours minimum for conventional neural repair, or... Anna paused, her mind racing through the theoretical procedures she had studied. Or I need 2 hours for something that's never been attempted before. What kind of something? The kind that either saves Small Claw completely or kills the patient immediately. There's no middle ground. Dr. Torres slumped against the monitoring equipment. Anna, I can't assist you anymore. I'm seeing double, my hands are shaking, and I've made 3 medication errors in the last hour. If you're going to attempt this procedure, you'll be doing it alone. Anna looked at her colleague and realized he was right. Dr. Torres had pushed himself beyond safe limits, and continuing to work in his condition could be more dangerous than helpful. But the thought of performing revolutionary neurosurgery without assistance was terrifying. Outside the settlement, the situation had reached a breaking point. Swift Strike, Crone's lieutenant, was struggling to maintain order among nearly 400 hunters from dozens of different packs. Territorial disputes that had been suppressed by concern for Small Claw were now erupting into violence. Anna watched through the security monitors as 2 young hunters began fighting near the settlement's main gate. Their claws tore chunks from each other's hides before older pack members separated them. But the aggression was spreading and Swift Strike couldn't be everywhere at once. They're losing patience, Anna murmured. If I don't make a decision soon, it won't matter whether Small Claw survives or not. She turned back to the surgical table where the young hunter lay motionless, except for the steady rise and fall of breathing. The bioelectric stimulation equipment sat ready, its settings calibrated based on theoretical calculations rather than proven procedures. Ben, get some rest. I'm going to attempt the stimulation therapy. Anna, you can't do this alone. The procedure requires constant monitoring of neural activity, heart function, and brain chemistry. One person can't track all those systems simultaneously. Then I'll have to learn fast. Anna began connecting the bioelectric stimulation array to Small Claw's neural pathways. The equipment was designed for minor nerve repairs in humans, but she had modified the settings to deliver much stronger pulses over a wider area. The first pulse sent electrical current through Small Claw's damaged neural cluster. The young hunter's body convulsed violently, and alarms screamed as vital signs spiked dangerously high. Through the window, Crone roared in alarm and pressed his massive hands against the glass. Neural activity increasing, Anna reported to herself, frantically adjusting the stimulation parameters. Heart rates elevated but stable. Breathing irregular but functional. The second pulse caused even stronger convulsions. Small Claw's claws extended involuntarily, tearing grooves in the surgical table's padding. But on the neural activity monitor, Anna could see something extraordinary happening. New pathways were forming, growing at an accelerated rate as the electrical stimulation forced damaged neurons to reconnect. Outside, the power fluctuations caused by the bioelectric equipment were causing systems failures throughout the settlement. Emergency lighting flickered on and off, and the defensive barriers completely failed. The hunters pressed closer to the buildings, some actually touching the walls as they tried to understand what was happening to their leader's offspring. Anna, the reactor temperature is critical, Captain Davis announced. If you continue drawing this much power, we're going to lose containment. The entire settlement could be destroyed. Anna ignored the warning, focused entirely on the delicate balance of electrical stimulation needed to repair Small Claw's neural damage. Too little current and the damaged pathways wouldn't regenerate. Too much and she would fry the young hunter's brain completely. The third pulse produced a different response. Instead of violent convulsions, Small Claw's body moved in what looked almost like natural motion. The cub's legs twitched in a running pattern and its head turned slightly from side to side. Motor function returning, Anna whispered, hardly daring to believe what she was seeing. Ben, look at this. The neural regeneration is working. But Dr. Torres had collapsed into a chair, finally overcome by exhaustion. Anna was truly alone now, monitoring multiple complex systems while performing a procedure that pushed the boundaries of medical science. The fourth pulse caused Small Claw's eyes to flutter, open for the first time since the surgery began. The young hunter's yellow eyes were unfocused and confused, but they were aware. The cub tried to lift its head, then fell back as the sedative still in its system fought against returning consciousness. Anna quickly reduced the stimulation levels, afraid that too much electrical activity might damage the newly formed neural pathways. The bioelectric therapy had worked better than she had dared hope, but Small Claw was still critically unstable. Come on, Anna murmured to her patient. You've made it this far. Just a little further. The settlement's reactor finally reached critical temperature. Captain Davis faced the ultimate decision. Shut down power to the surgical bay and almost certainly doom Small Claw, or risk a reactor explosion that would kill everyone in the colony. Through the surgical bay window, Crone watched his offspring's eyes flutter open and close. For the first time in 14 hours, the massive hunter leader allowed himself to hope. But outside, the crowd of aliens was becoming increasingly agitated as power failures darkened sections of the settlement around them. Anna worked through her 15th hour of surgery, her hands steady despite exhaustion that threatened to overwhelm her. Small Claw's neural pathways were rebuilding themselves, but the process was far from complete. The most dangerous part of the entire procedure still lay ahead, bringing the young hunter back to full consciousness while ensuring that the bioelectric therapy had truly restored normal function. Almost there, Anna whispered, adjusting the final stimulation settings. Just hold on a little longer. 18 hours after she had made her first incision, Dr. Anna Reed watched Small Claw's eyes open and focus for the first time. The young hunter looked around the surgical bay with growing awareness, its yellow eyes taking in the strange surroundings before settling on the exhausted human doctor, who had refused to give up. Small Claw, Anna whispered, her voice hoarse from hours of constant work. Can you understand me? The cub tried to speak, producing only a soft growling sound. But its head turned toward Anna's voice, and one massive paw lifted slightly off the surgical table. The bioelectric neural stimulation had worked. Motor function was returning. Through the surgical bay window, Crone pressed his face against the glass, his massive form trembling with emotion. When he saw his offspring's eyes open and track movement, the hunter leader let out a sound that was part roar, part sob. It echoed through the settlement and was answered by hundreds of voices from the crowd outside. "Anna," Captain Roy Davis called through the intercom, his voice tight with urgency. "The reactor is at critical temperature. I have to shut down power to everything except life support. Can you complete the surgery on emergency power?" Anna looked at the monitoring equipment that had kept Small Claw alive through the marathon procedure. Emergency power would mean no surgical lighting, no advanced monitoring, and no way to respond if complications arose. But the young hunter's vital signs were stronger now, the three hearts beating in perfect synchronization. "Do it," Anna replied. "The surgery is finished. Small Claw just needs time to recover." The lights dimmed throughout the settlement as Captain Davis redirected power to cool the overheating fusion reactor. In the surgical bay, emergency lighting cast everything in a red glow that somehow seemed appropriate for the moment when species barriers began to break down. Dr. Ben Torres had awakened from his exhausted collapse and stumbled back to the surgical table. Despite his fatigue, he began checking Small Claw's vital signs with the remaining battery-powered equipment. "Anna, this is incredible. Neural activity is almost at normal levels. The bioelectric therapy didn't just repair the damage, it actually improved the neural efficiency." Small Claw was becoming more alert by the minute. The cub managed to lift its head and look directly at Anna, studying the small human who had spent 18 hours fighting to save its life. There was intelligence in those alien eyes and something that might have been gratitude. Anna activated the intercom connecting to the waiting area where Crone maintained his vigil. "Blade Speaker, your offspring lives. Small Claw will recover fully." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Crone's roar of joy was taken up by every hunter in the settlement, creating a sound like rolling thunder that shook the building's walls. Through the security monitors, Anna could see the crowd of aliens embracing each other, their earlier aggression replaced by celebration. But the most significant moment came when Anna opened the surgical bay door and allowed Crone to approach his offspring. The massive hunter leader moved with unusual caution, as if afraid that sudden movement might undo the miracle he had just witnessed. "Small Claw," Crone whispered, gently touching his offspring's face with one enormous claw. The young hunter responded by nuzzling against its parent's hand, the simple gesture conveying more than any words could express. Crone looked up at Anna, this small human who had accomplished what hunter medicine could not. For a moment, the two very different beings simply stared at each other, the exhausted doctor covered in alien blood, and the fierce predator whose world had been forever changed. "Healing Maker Anna," Crone said slowly, choosing his words with care. "Pack leader owes debt that cannot be repaid. Small Claw lives because Softskin has strength hunters did not recognize." "I'm just a doctor," Anna replied tiredly. "Helping sick children is what I do." "No," Crone shook his massive head. "Hunters have watched humans for 3 seasons. Thought softskins were weak because you have no claws, no fangs, no thick hide. But Anna Healing Maker worked 18 hours without rest. Never gave up when Small Claw seemed beyond saving. This is strength hunters' respect." Outside the settlement, the celebration continued as word spread through the crowd that Small Claw would survive. But Anna noticed something else happening. The different hunter packs were no longer maintaining their territorial separations. The shared anxiety over Small Claw's fate had broken down barriers between groups that had been enemies for generations. Swift Strike, Crone's lieutenant, entered the surgical bay carrying something in her claws. It was a piece of crystalline mineral that gleamed with inner light, clearly valuable and significant to hunter culture. "For Healing Maker," Swift Strike said, placing the crystal near Anna's hand. "Pack gift for saving Pack Young. Anna has earned place in hunter memory songs." Dr. Torres helped Anna to a chair as exhaustion finally overwhelmed her. 18 hours of surgery, most of it performed under impossible conditions with inadequate equipment, had pushed her beyond any reasonable human limits. But seeing Small Claw alert and responsive made every hour of struggle worthwhile. Captain Davis entered the bay, his face showing a mixture of relief and amazement. "Anna, I've been in contact with Colonial Command." When I told them what you accomplished here, they initially didn't believe it. Successful major surgery on an unknown alien species, using improvised techniques and equipment. They're calling it impossible. Not impossible, Anna said, watching Smallclaw try to sit up on the surgical table. Just difficult. Over the following days, as Smallclaw recovered with remarkable speed, the relationship between humans and hunters began to change in ways no one had anticipated. Crone declared the territory around the settlement to be neutral ground, protected by all hunter packs. The crystalline gift Swiftstrike had presented turned out to be a rare mineral that could revolutionize human technology. But more importantly, the hunters began to see humans differently. The species they had dismissed as weak and fragile had produced someone willing to work 18 hours straight to save the life of an alien child. Anna's refusal to give up, even when the odds seemed impossible, earned a respect that no amount of weapons or defensive barriers could have achieved. Word of Smallclaw's recovery spread beyond the immediate territory. Hunter packs from across the continent began arriving, not to threaten the human settlement but to see the healing makers who had accomplished the impossible. Some brought their own injured for treatment. Others offered territorial concessions and trade agreements. Anna found herself becoming an unlikely diplomat, using medical knowledge to bridge the gap between species. The surgical bay that had seen 18 hours of desperate work became a meeting place where humans and hunters learned to communicate as equals rather than potential enemies. Smallclaw made a full recovery, with no lasting effects from the massive neural trauma. The young hunter grew strong and healthy, but retained a unique perspective shaped by the experience of being saved by creatures its kind had considered inferior. As Smallclaw matured, it became an advocate for human-hunter cooperation, helping to build bridges between the species. Months later, when Colonial Command finally sent investigators to verify Anna's report, they found a thriving alliance between humans and hunters. The settlement had expanded into a major research station, with hunters providing protection and territorial knowledge while humans offered medical, care, and technological assistance. The investigators asked Anna how she had known that attempting the surgery was the right choice, given the enormous risks involved. Her answer became part of the official record and eventually part of human legend. I didn't know it was the right choice, Anna admitted. I just knew it was the only choice. When a child is dying and you have the skills to help, you don't calculate odds or worry about consequences. You do whatever it takes for as long as it takes. That's what being human means. The 18-hour surgery had saved more than Smallclaw's life. It had proven that humanity's greatest strength wasn't superior weapons or advanced technology. It was the simple refusal to give up when lives were at stake, even alien lives. In a galaxy full of species that valued strength and conquest, humans had found their niche as the healers who would work miracles for anyone who needed them. And in the end, that determination to preserve life, regardless of species or origin, would earn humanity allies across the stars and establish them as a force for good. In a universe that had seen too much violence, the beast's cub lived, and with that life came the foundation of an alliance that would change both species forever.